This week, we see if Sonic the Hedgehog can outrun the competition and break the dreaded video game movie curse. So pop some corn, grab a soda, and take a seat, because you're now listening to The Casual Cinema. Welcome everyone to our first review of the 2020 film. I'm one of your hosts, Josh, joined as always by Nathan, and this week we are talking all things Sonic. It's been receiving mostly positive to mixed reviews, and you might be surprised to learn that one of us didn't like the movie. You might be surprised. So without further ado, I thought we could discuss some of the expectations we had before seeing the movie, basically whether or not we were excited, thrilled, or itching to get a glimpse of the new design of Sonic, or just had any kind of positive or negative views going in. Now, I know, Nathan, both of us kind of walked away from this film with very different views, and I want to ask you first what you thought before going into the film.
Okay, hello, it's me. I wasn't expecting much, to be honest. The redesign got, I was obviously a bit more excited after that because he looked freaking scary in the beginning, and I'm glad they changed it. But yeah, I had, low expectations really. I mean, these movies never really go too well. I didn't really enjoy Detective Pikachu that much. I thought that was kind of and I felt like this was going to be pretty similar to that, which I guess it kind of was, but kind of wasn't. I don't know. I mean, in terms of humor, it's pretty similar, I think. But yeah, I had pretty low expectations going in.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I mean, I've seen quite a lot of video game movies. I'm not proud of the fact that I've seen every single Resident Evil film. And having exposed myself to that kind of content, I know full well how low the bar can be set. So going into this film, I wasn't excited. I wasn't thinking it was going to be awful. I was just like, oh, well, let's see if I can just have fun with it, you know? I think that's the best you can ask of any movie, or the most you can ask of any movie, is to at least have fun. So that's how I felt anyway. And then I guess we saw the movie. So just general thoughts. What did you think when you actually sat and saw the film?
Yeah, I had a good time. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was, fun family movie. I laughed a few times. Not all the jokes hit, obviously. I mean, it's a kids' film. There's little fart jokes and stuff in there, which I don't really like. But there were some good puns and some good moments. I really enjoyed Jim Carrey. I'm usually not a huge fan of his. I think it's a bit over the top, but I enjoyed him in this. Yeah, so overall, I enjoyed the film. And now your turn. Yeah.
All right. Well, Nathan says it that way because he knows how I feel about this movie. I went to the film and I sat down, and it's the first 5 minutes, I was just like, I don't know how I feel about this. And I kind of felt a little bit like the beginning of, say, something like Thor Ragnarok. Like the first few minutes of Thor Ragnarok where he's hanging from the chain and he's cracking jokes with the Surtur, the fire thing. It's I don't know how I feel about this. But then the movie takes a turn into some really funny and sort of upbeat, fun comedy and whatnot. And that's why I really enjoy that film. This movie, and the reason why I'm making that comparison is because with this, there was the complete inverse effect. The movie just, for me, got progressively worse. And none of the jokes hit for me. And I would say maybe 60 to 70% of them were my blunders, and then the other percent was so cringeworthy I had trouble looking at the screen. I mean, you pointed out Jim Carrey, and I would argue that, like most people, we love Jim Carrey during his golden age. Obviously during the 90s, when he did such films like Ace Ventura, The Mask, Liar Liar. Even his brief stint in Batman Forever is notable because he's so over the top that he almost makes that movie. But in this case, it was almost like he just didn't fit in a 2020 space. I was just kind of wondering what he was doing. There's a dance sequence we'll get into more detail on, but when a moment like that happened, I had trouble looking at the screen, but overall, that was my experience with the movie. It was hard to look at what was happening. I guess we can get into details about the story, but there's not much to say. I mean, it is your basic E.T., fish out of water plot. I mean, I think you'd agree that it's basically the same. It's basically cliche ridden at this point.
Yeah, they just take the whole alien route as an alien kind of thing, and no one has been in hiding, and he has to come out of hiding for whatever reason, because he finally gets caught by a human, and then it's just basically he does not trust it at first or whatever, and then befriends the humans. Yeah, exactly like E.T. Now that you pointed out.
Yeah,
very cliche.
And I've seen comparisons made between it and Bumblebee as well, because I don't know if you've seen Bumblebee, but that also features the same plot. But there obviously you can make critiques because of the characters. But besides the plot itself, there's not much else I can say, because it is, as we've said, so stereotypical that it's not like there's any surprises. Nothing will surprise you. So I don't want to get too hamstrung by that. I'd rather move into the characters and to the performances. And despite the fact that Jim Carrey's over the top, I wouldn't say his performance is awful or anything like that. Like, I wasn't thinking, oh my god, this is bad. The same with any of the actors. I don't think any of their performances were bad. I mean, what do you think? I didn't think that.
No, everyone was, fine. It was either good or okay. I don't think there was any bad acting, really, that I could notice. Actually, the only thing, I felt like Sonic wasn't good sometimes, and some of the lines were delivered a bit flat, or just didn't fit the emotion he was trying to convey. That's what I noticed that stood out to me and took me out of the film. I can't think of an exact moment, but yeah.
It did feel a little wooden at times. Jokes felt a little bit too scripted, like as if someone's literally just sat there and gone, oh, let's make this pop culture reference. And it feels a bit forced when they do it. And then when they do definitely go towards the end of the movie, because we are talking spoilers here, when the whole town kind of unites around Sonic, it is very much, it feels almost like an anime. It's kind of like the power of friendship has won and we are ready to defeat Eggman. And you're just kind of like, oh.
That was really out of nowhere, and it added nothing to the film because they didn't do anything anyways. They just stood there.
Yeah, the town didn't impact Sonic and vice versa. Like, Sonic talked about how much he appreciated and liked this place, but there's no reciprocation, you know what I mean? Like, there's just a crazy guy who's after Sonic, and there's a little Sonic Easter egg there. But then you don't see anyone else who's spotted him or anything like that. I feel like maybe if the idea that he was this mythical creature, kind of like Bigfoot, was blown up a little bit more, it might have made for something a bit more funny. And maybe pulled on the heartstrings a bit more, but besides that, that was just a weird moment. But that's just one moment. I'm talking in general that the film itself can come across as a little wooden. But that's just, as I've said, that's just dialogue, maybe. But Sonic, I found pretty annoying. Personally, I was not enjoying Sonic at all. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I was going to say, maybe that's why I enjoyed Jim Carrey so much. What you're saying about, the script being kind of wooden, I suppose, and it just sounds like everyone's reading lines. Whereas Jim Carrey feels like he's really bringing his own thing to the table, and I'm confident he came up with a lot of jokes himself. That's what it feels like anyways. And if he didn't, he definitely added to them. So that's why I guess he was so enjoyable and fun to watch on screen.
Yeah, and Ben Schwartz, who plays or voices Sonic, is also a comedian, so I imagine that he may have been given the option, but then again, when you're an animated character, it's pretty hard to be able to do what you want. Like, to have that kind of room to crack jokes, especially in a movie like this that is rated PG. And I feel like with Jim, he was probably given the chance to, do whatever he wanted or do stuff that's wacky, because he was basically told, hey, you're in a kid's film, go for it. But I guess where you're coming from, I understand. It's just that I found it repulsive. I just couldn't stand it. I'm sorry. Like, the more I sat through this movie, I was just wanting to be out of the theater so much. I couldn't stand it. I don't know what was going on. I couldn't tell if it was just because I was tired, but I tried to give it a chance. And as things unfolded, I seriously just wanted to be anywhere else.
And for me, it was just like, I don't know, it's a kids' film, and that's a mindset I had going in. I wasn't expecting anything amazing. I didn't get anything amazing. I just basically got a standard kids movie with a few good jokes, and I don't know. And the whole like thing about family and whatever, that felt rushed, especially how they resolved it towards the end. When it's a kids movie, they always try and throw in some message, and since it's always going to be a shorter movie, it always has a quick like wrap up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's always like just quickly resolved at the end. Oh look, we're family, yeah, and it kind of like doesn't have a lot of time to grow on you as a concept in the film.
Well, that's just.
But yeah, that's my I don't know, but I had a fun time.
Yeah, I mean, I know it sounds weird, but to our listeners out there, I guess it's probably why we don't have a massive, massive amount to say about the film in general. Because on the one hand, it's not especially great. I think that if you're somebody who liked it, I don't think you can say that it was a great or amazing movie. And I think that if you're like me, who was somebody who really didn't like it, I don't think there's much more to say other than the fact that I just didn't enjoy it. Do you know what I'm getting at? Like, it's a very samey plot. The characters are just there. To be honest with you, I would have far preferred it if they actually had Tails and Knuckles and Amy and the Emeralds from the actual Sonic game in it. Because I'm not a massive Sonic fan, but I'm aware of those elements of the games. So I was surprised to find that there actually weren't other characters in it. Or at least references. I know that Tails pops up in one of the end credit scenes, but it just seems a bit too little too late by the time it got there. I feel as though where this movie could have gone was a more Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse route, where it celebrated the character of Sonic. Even in an animated format, they could have done so much more to actually include the characters who are present in the games. Where I feel like instead they went towards that Alvin and the Chipmunks route. And like the Transformers movies, it suffered because instead of focusing on the titular character, it decided to include these human characters who you literally could not care about whatsoever. I was just like, oh, there's this guy called Tom, played by James Marsden. He just seems like an everyman. I could care less. He's got a wife, okay. She has a sister and a daughter, and it's like, all right, fine. We don't need to spend this much time on them, but it looks like we're going to.
Come on, now barely in the movie, and the sister was pretty funny.
The sister had her moments, but she was just playing at type. Like, she was just cast to be that sort of stereotypical character. That doesn't mean that it was bad. It was just, they could have done more. That's how I feel about this movie. Like, I know the defense is that it's a kid's movie. It's like, oh, it's all right. Just let it go. Let it be what it is. I don't know what it is, though. I feel like kids deserve better. Like, when we have movies like Toy Story and Pixar's delivering these kinds of films, and even other studios, like I've said, even DreamWorks is pumping out animated movies that are far and beyond what anyone previously expected. Then you get these, which is just kind of like, well, we have a property here. We may as well use it. Let's just pump out a movie.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you think they would have like learned by now, like what kids prefer. Because you have these Pixar movies that appeal, these animated films that are for kids, but they appeal to people of all ages. And they're fantastic, right? Like, no matter how old you are, it's like 9 out of 10 films most of the time, right? They're great. And I feel like it's weird that they haven't learned since, like Thunderbirds and whatever else, where we had these like live action freaking adaptations that are just garbage. But in saying that, I enjoyed that film when I was a kid, but I'm sure if I watched it now, I would find it repulsive. And I agree, like, I'm not a huge Sonic fan either. I think neither one of us are, so that's maybe why we don't have a lot to say either. But I agree that I would have liked to see the other characters. And when Tails came at the end, that was the most exciting part of the movie for me. I got really excited that Tails was there. But yeah, I suppose even though I did enjoy the film, it is too little too late. And it's like, oh, I have to wait for a sequel now. What are they going to do with that? Like, are they just going to have Tails? Are they going to slowly build it? Or are they going to have Tails and Knuckles, Amy, and, like, bring everyone in? Like,
I guess
that's
so.
going to be hard to do now. It's going to be weird.
Well, I just felt like everyone in our theatre, when it got to that scene, was like, oh, Tails. Like, you could hear the kids even going, hey, look, it's Tails. And I was like, why wasn't he here the whole time? Like, he's like Sonic's best friend. And instead we've got Tom. Like, I was saying to this people I went and saw the movie with, I was saying, look, if they had done that sequence where Tails had showed up through the portal at the beginning of the movie and maybe he was hunting down Sonic because the emeralds were, like, scattered across the earth or something like that and they had to go find them, I feel like that would have been a far more interesting storyline, do you know what I'm saying, than just, hey, here's Tom, here's Dr. Robotnik, Sonic was running around the baseball pitch and there was lightning. Like the whole lightning thing in this movie was also very confusing as someone who has some knowledge of the games but very little, because I don't know how he turned into Thor at the end of the film, but I was very confused by that. And I just thought that would have been a moment where they could have done the whole supersonic, he goes yellow and stuff like that. And instead they did lightning.
Yeah, I was confused by that too when he first does that big blast that, like, EMPs the whole town. I'm like, what? Sonic can do that? And I'm like, they made his powers, like, electric based, kind of like the new Flash, I suppose. They're like, there's always, like, electricity going around him. I don't know, it's weird.
Well, it feels I
didn't understand it.
It feels like they had the character of Sonic, and they had Dr. Robotnik, and then they had this other movie, and they went, alright, we need to put these characters in this cookie-cutter movie that will appeal to families. Why don't we just do that, rather than actually invest time in figuring out a plot that actually involves the elements that make Sonic Sonic? Does that make sense? Like, it seems as though they just sliced it up and went, here you go. It's almost like when you get... I mean, I haven't seen it, but I've seen bits of it, and from what I can tell, Need for Speed, and there is a movie of Need for Speed, that just basically has cars in it and racing, and then they just went, oh, well, that's Need for Speed. It's like, I'm sure there's more than that, but they've just taken that element of cars, racing, make a movie, call it Need for Speed. That's what it felt like. It was like, Sonic, Dr. Eggman, we're going to call it Sonic the Hedgehog, but it's got nothing else to do with the character.
Yeah, I mean, and also now that you bring up the whole, chuck, like, a character into a world of humans, what's with that? How come they always do that? Like, Transformers, and then even Bumblebee, they just did it again. They're just like...
It's really annoying. Like, I think it's studios thinking that audiences need to have a human character to connect with, so they feel the need to inject them into the narrative. The problem is that I can't relate to Tom in this movie because he's like a 38-year-old and he's a cop, and I'm just kind of like, dude, I'm not a cop. Like, I'm not in the same position you are in. I can't really relate to you. Like, if it was a younger person, like maybe a kid or a teenager, like in Bumblebee when you have Haley Steinfeld as this young teen, it might have made more sense. Or even E.T., you got kids in it. But in this, it's like you've got this grown man, and I just found the human characters kind of forced.
Yeah, you're right, because even in the animated Sonic TV show, it's like a little kid that's with him, yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I remember. I'm pretty sure I remember correctly. When I was a kid, I watched, like, one... I know there's been a few.
I think so.
I watched an animated Sonic, and he was in the real world, and he was with this kid, and that does work a lot more, because then it'd be more relatable, because it's weird, it's almost like he becomes his adoptive father at the end or something, which is really weird.
Yeah, I don't see how it relates at all to the character of Sonic. And as you say, it just makes the whole point... it just makes the point clearer that focus on the Sonic and the characters of Sonic. You know, like, it's what bugs me so much about the Transformers movies is show the Transformers. Like, people think it doesn't work. But if you look at the Planet of the Apes movies, what makes those films work is the fact that they're focused on the apes. The human characters are there, but they're not memorable, right? Like, you think about the apes. And I think that's because there's a intriguing narrative made around them. Whereas in the Transformers movies, and in this case in Sonic, you've just got this CGI character, and he's making jokes, but it's not like even like Deadpool. Like, with Deadpool, he's making cynical jokes, and he's cracking wise, but you understand where he's coming from, and the whole entire narrative is focused on him and no one else.
Actually, also, while we're there, yes, they ripped off Deadpool, and they also ripped off X-Men Quicksilver.
Oh, I know.
Playing table tennis with himself, just like Quicksilver does, and also the 2 slow motion scenes. I mean, the first one in the bar, which is really a random scene where they're in that Western bar.
Yeah, that bar was weird.
That's exactly like, something Quicksilver would do when he
does his slow-mo thing
in the prison.
Yeah, exactly. I felt the same way. I was watching it and I was like, this is literally Quicksilver. The minute everything stopped and he started running, I went, you have got to be kidding me. They've literally just copied Quicksilver.
They've even got the music playing and everything.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And the music in general was so poppy and just like, you're based it on a video game. Celebrate the video game, right? I feel like it would have been so much more fun and cool and more retro, and it would have been more successful as a result, given how, Hollywood is obsessed with the old and the 80s nowadays, to have had a soundtrack or music that was more reminiscent of that era. Even if Sonic and this storyline in general had taken place in the 80s, I feel like it would have benefited more, just because it would have been like, oh, now the music makes more sense because it fits the character. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
It's just more of a celebration of that energy and that sort of era where video games were more gameplay focused, and I guess the music was such a massive highlight. But I don't know, to me it just felt like a wasted opportunity. And I understand that you can take it on the merit of it's a kid's film, just let it be, but it's 2020, and I'm just like, come on, man, you can do better. And that's how I felt. I was just thinking to myself, this could have been so much better had they actually given it the proper time and effort. And evidently they did care, because they just completely redesigned Sonic. But at the end of the day, I wonder, did that matter at all if the story was the way it was? I mean, sure, I like the new design. I've got nothing against it, and the old one was way worse. But it is, as we've said, just the same old plot you've seen a million times before. And
it makes you wonder, was their intention always just to destroy what we know about Sonic, what we know and love about Sonic? Because if that was their initial design, and like nothing changed except for the design, all the lines were the same, like nothing, all the actors said, none of them came back and did anything, right?
Yeah.
So all they did was change the look of Sonic. If they were trying so hard to make Sonic look like this like realistic, scary blue thing, then maybe that's what they were trying to do. They're trying to, redesign Sonic before they did the redesign. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I feel like...
Because that had to have been approved. Like, no one looked at that and thought, oh yeah, that looks like Sonic. No way, right? So they obviously wanted him to look like that initially for a reason.
Well, I was going to say, it could have just been another example of how corporate this movie is. Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels like a bunch of studio executives went, I mean, he's blue, he looks kind of like Sonic, let's just go with it. Right? Just hear me out. That's probably what they thought. And then the director has said that he's like a massive Sonic fan and he wanted to make a movie that was like true to the character. But I'm like, dude, did you really do that? Or did you just make a movie that was a vessel for this thing to make money? Do you know what I mean? And I feel like when it all came out and everyone went, we hate this, what the hell have you done? They had to immediately pull a 180 and go and reverse it. And the only reason why they reversed it was because they went, oh, people like Sonic and don't like what we've done with it. Well, I guess we're just going to have to change it. So we could make money out of it. You know what I mean? Like it just seems like a massive money thing that they just didn't care, and then they realized people did, and then they changed it so they could at least make some sort of coin out of it.
Yeah, I think just because you shove a bunch of references to Sonic in there doesn't mean it's a film dedicated to him. It doesn't really work like that. Because that's the thing. It's like, oh, there's so many references to Sonic. Some you won't even miss. I mean, some you will miss the first time you watch it. You have to watch it again. It's like, well, that just sounds like you're trying to force me to watch it a second time.
Well, you know what's funny about it? It's almost like, let's take the idea of Mario, and instead of putting him in the Mushroom Kingdom, let's put him in the real world and have him still be animated and all that sort of jazz. And don't bring Luigi, don't bring Bowser, don't bring... Oh, you can bring Bowser, sorry. Don't bring Princess Peach, all of that. Just bring Bowser and Mario and have him in the real world, being himself, and see how that goes down. And I would have guaranteed you it would have been like, what the actual hell? And that feels like exactly what they've done here. Like, because even the thought of that being done to Mario is really bad. So I don't know how this thing got approved, but I guess they thought, let's just see what we can do to make money again. So I don't know. It just sounds bad.
I'm also left wondering if that, like the whole Tails thing, if that was in the original cut of the movie or they added that in later. Because I was thinking about it and I'm like, man, that means they would have had to redesign Tails as well, and Tails probably looked like scary as hell before. But now I'm thinking, have they just done that because they know that, Sonic, what people want from a Sonic movie now, and it's already too late because they already made the film.
Yeah, I'm
because they didn't investigate beforehand what people wanted. No. After they make the film, they care what people think. So I'm thinking, did they just shove Tails in at the end so you go, oh, awesome! I can't wait for the second one now.
I think you might be right, because it definitely feels that way. Like, this was changed within a 3-month span. The whole design of Sonic.
And it's just Tails, right? It's just Tails, like, oh, I found him, and then flies. Like, there's nothing else here. You can just do that on a computer in, like,
oh yeah, of
in
course.
a month or so, right? They can just crank that out. So, yeah, I have a feeling that they just added that in after the redesign, that whole scene.
Yeah, it was literally the fans saying, this doesn't look like Sonic, and then they probably went, oh, guys, we haven't included... Tails either. Maybe we should put that in there to make fans happy. And then I'm seeing all these reviews about how fans are going to love it. And I'm like, how?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that too. And I don't get how this is a movie for Sonic fans. I would strongly disagree. I would say the complete opposite. I would say this is a movie for people who don't know who Sonic is. That's what I would say. Like, for me, I'm like, I know who he is. I've played a bit of the games. I never finished a Sonic game. I've seen like a couple episodes of an animated one here and there, right? And I'm like, okay, this movie's fine. I don't care because I don't know too much about the lore, so it doesn't bother me. But if someone was like a huge Sonic fan and loved all the characters, you go see this movie, no way you'll like it. No way.
Well, the more I was exposed to the Resident Evil games, the more I looked at the movies and I went, what the hell? Like, what are you doing? Like, that's not the game at all. Like, you've literally just made Resident Evil because you went, zombies, Umbrella Corporation, that's it. Do you know what I mean? And it's, like we keep pointing out, it's the same thing with Sonic. They just went, Sonic, Eggman, go. And it didn't, to me, it just didn't work because I was sitting there going, where's the other characters, like I've said? And like you say, I just don't understand it. I don't get it. Because I guess the inverse, or I've said it like before, but the complete opposite of this would be something like Warcraft, right? Where Warcraft was a very average movie because it throwed too much of the game at you. Does that make sense? Like, too much lore and too much stuff that was just making things confusing, and you didn't know anyone's name, and you were just like, what's going on? Unless you played the game, you weren't going to know. But this is this movie's like, you don't have to play the game, you don't have any knowledge of Sonic, you'll probably like it more. The more you know about Sonic, the less you're going to like it.
I don't understand the need for these video game movies if we want to move on to that as a topic, because I'm nervous as hell for the Uncharted movie. Because now that is a video game franchise I'm a huge fan of. It's my favorite video game franchise of all time. And I only just found out today that Mark Wahlberg is playing Victor Sullivan, and I actually hate that.
Yeah, and Tom Holland is Nathan Drake.
That's fine, because Tom Holland, I'm fine. He can play a young Nathan Drake. I can see that working. I really don't know about Mark Wahlberg, though.
Yeah,
Sully, that sounds really weird. I can't picture him pulling that off.
I don't think an Uncharted
wrong.
movie will work, to be honest with you.
An Uncharted movie doesn't work because it's already a cinematic game.
I was going to say,
I don't want to go too much into it. I'm sure we'll review that one when it comes out next year.
I completely agree. I think that you have to work with what you've got. And I think the biggest issue with video game adaptations is because they take certain things that they think, and by they I mean these studios, will work, and they don't. And they don't because they're not understanding what the fans of the games like. The reason why I don't think this movie worked, Sonic that is because all they did was take the main character and the main villain and put them in some Earth setting that has absolutely nothing to do with the video games and thought that it would, go well. And I think they would have had far more success if they made an animated movie set in the Sonic fictional world that included the characters and they found ways to introduce them all, and they could have had this 80s synth soundtrack that was really fun and 8-bit and just enjoyable and different and new, and that celebrated the character, and all of it would have made sense. Or at least some of it would have. And on the topic of Uncharted, you're right, it is cinematic. And I think that's the issue with other video game movies, is they look at these films, like even the Assassin's Creed movie, they kept jumping between modern day and the past mid-fight. Like a fight scene will be happening and they'll be jumping back and forth. And you're thinking to yourself, well, that never happened in the game. You were always just seeing the past, and then you'd have brief stints where it was in the present. And even then, in the Assassin's Creed movie, because we're on the topic of just video game adaptations, they introduced this brand new character to the series, and they could have honestly stuck with Ezio and Desmond, two charismatic characters, interesting characters. Desmond has a past that you don't really know about, and Ezio's meant to be this romantic, you know what I mean? And he's obviously Italian, so it brings a little bit of flavor. Well, at least in the first game, they set up Desmond in such a way where you think, he mentions a past, right? He talks about something, and you're kind of like, I wonder where this guy came from. And they don't really get to explore it that much.
Again, the most interesting thing about Assassin's Creed, I think, is the lore. And again, they pretty much butcher that in the movie.
Yeah,
because I'm a huge fan of Assassin's Creed 2, and I'm watching the movie, and I'm trying to listen to everything. I'm got my keen eyes on. I'm like, okay, I want to see everything, and there's no link to what I know about Assassin's Creed. There's no link to anything I know or love about it, except there's a piece of Eden at the end of the film. It's exactly like Tails coming at the end. It's like what's the point?
Yeah, exactly.
What have you done? You've done nothing. You've just where the characters. Where's the again? Yeah, it's like they have the bad guys, the good guys, the assassins and the Templars, whatever, Abstergo. But it's exactly what you're saying. You have the good guy and the bad guy. That even then, it's like more like the corporations rather than the characters, and that's it.
Yeah, and it's funny because it makes me think about, okay, then what's the best video game movie? And it's sad to say. Oh, I guess it is, that the best video game movie that has ever been, thus far, is the Mortal Kombat film. Now, that movie has aged badly. The CGI does not look good at all in that film, and the acting isn't very great, but there's chemistry at times, and all the characters, or at least some of the characters from Mortal Kombat, are featured. You get Liu Kang, you get Johnny Cage, there's Sonya, Shang Tsung, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, all that. They're all fighting in a tournament, yada, yada, yada. Raiden's there. They're fighting to defend Earthrealm, blah, blah, blah. Like, the plot of the game is there, and it's working because they're focusing less on, I guess, the mundanity of a basic storyline. They're trying to focus on characters and the banter between them. And I feel like that works, whereas in these movies, the more recent ones that we're getting, at least the video game adaptations, they're so you know, aimed at telling, oh, what'll get most people interested, or what'll just get people to sit down in a theater and watch it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just these basic plots that have nothing necessarily to do with the game. There's just a bunch of characters who are from, or not even a bunch of characters, just some characters from it going about their day. That's what it feels like. And that's what this movie felt like. That's what Sonic felt like. It just felt like somebody had took a template and went, here you go, and we'll chuck some pop culture jokes in there for you.
Well, I haven't seen the Mortal Kombat movie, but I want to. It looks hilarious. But
there's two of them. The second one's god awful. But the first one's bearable. I do say the first one, the one I'm talking about, is still the best video game movie in my opinion, because, you know, at least it works to some degree, where I feel like most video game movies just don't understand the games, and they don't understand, as a result, what fans of the games want and what general audiences could benefit from now seeing this franchise in a completely different medium. But
yeah, I mean, I can't even think of any good video game movies. They're all so forgettable. I can't even think.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's just, yeah, you are right. It's weird that they always feel like they have to tell this like alternate story, and yeah, and also like it's just to draw a mass audience in, right? It's like what can appeal to everyone, because not everyone's gonna know like everything about Sonic. So it's like, oh, if you bring him into the real world, oh, I know about Earth, I can go watch that movie. You know, it's a lot easier, I suppose. I'm trying to like think of the reason why they would do that, and I think that's it. It's just more people are gonna probably enjoy it.
Yeah,
because it's simple, right? It's simple, and especially parents that go see a movie with their kids, they can be like, oh, I enjoyed that. Where they go, they don't know anything about Sonic, and they're like, well, what the hell is this shit? This is crazy. I don't like this.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, as I've said, how long does it take for them to basically explain what Sonic is? It wouldn't necessarily take that long for them to be like, oh, look, maybe there's some backstory behind these emeralds or something like that. It's like when you're explaining the Infinity Stones in Marvel. It's just like, oh, they're responsible for all creation. Do we sit here and ask the question of how? No, we're just told they're responsible for it. Just go along with it, right? And then by the end of it, you don't really care all that much about the Infinity Stones. You're there for the characters, and you're there for the conflict that's happening in the actual story. And I feel like this is just another example. Would I have cared that much about the Emeralds? Just as much as would I have cared about the Dragon Balls if it was Dragon Ball Z or something? Not really, because it's really the characters I'm more interested in and the conflict they're having with the antagonists, you know? Like, it just feels like that's what's happening here. It's like a plot device. It just would have worked, and it could have just been simple, and they still could have told the story they wanted to.
Yeah, I know it's not a video game movie, but did you have to bring up Dragon Ball? What we're trying to think of, like...
Sorry, I just thought of it. I just thought of an object that had to be collected. My bad.
Nah, but yeah, nah, yeah, you're right. You've made me realize maybe it's not such a good film. I mean, I don't think it's great. I said at the beginning, I didn't think it was anything amazing. It was fine. And yes, it could have been a lot better. I mean, most movies we go see can probably be a lot better. That's just how it is, unfortunately. And I'm curious to see... it probably is going to get a sequel, let's be honest. I think it's done pretty well in theaters. So I'm curious to see what they do with the sequel, because they have an opportunity there to really make it more about what we know about Sonic and bring all the characters in and make it more video gamey. They have an opportunity there to just do a complete like tonal flip, right? They can leave Earth, like they can do whatever. He has the ring, so they can just like teleport around. So it can be crazy. They can go to all different worlds. It's endless possibilities, really.
Yeah. It'll just be a question of what they do with Eggman then, because if that's what the story becomes and it's more focused on Sonic and Tails and potentially Knuckles, then it becomes a matter of, is Jim Carrey then the dated aspect of the film?
It'll be the same as the games. He'll find a way out and then he'll just want revenge. And he'll just
no, I just mean his performance. Something. I just mean his performance and the overall portrayal of the character will feel still dated. Do you know what I mean? Like, it'll feel like, oh, all these characters are together now and it's a completely different story and the tone's now a little different. But does that mean Jim Carrey's different, or is he still playing that same...
I mean, I disagree. I don't I don't know what you mean by dated. I think his performance as Eggman's great. I think it's hilarious. He's a crazy doctor. I mean, he's fine. He doesn't have to change. He's always
No,
been a bit
it's
like
more
wacky
like
and over the top.
it's more like from my experience with watching many Jim Carrey movies, he just feels like crazy Jim Carrey from the 90s. Like what I would see, he's basically the Riddler from Batman Forever. It's exactly what he is in this movie. And I guess from where I'm standing, again, that's why I brought it up earlier, and I keep bringing it up. As a 2020 film, I don't want a 30-year-old movie. That's just how I feel. I just don't want the same thing over and over again. You know, it's what bugged me when when I saw Rise of Skywalker, was just the fact that they were running into the same walls they just keep running into. And it's like, you know how to get around it, you know how to fix this problem, but you still make mistakes. And to me, that's the problem I had with this movie. It's like, I still went in expecting a kids' movie, I just wanted to have fun, but I ultimately couldn't forgive it because it just kept making mistakes and it kept making the wrong turns. And I was just like, what are you doing? This isn't hard. You're just making a Sonic movie. Just make Sonic. Just do it. Here are the characters. Here's the storyline from the games. I'm sure you could just pull up one and just be like, here we go. Here's some emeralds. Let's just have fun. But it just feels like they went, oh, well, we need to know about these human characters instead. And I'm just like, I don't care. I couldn't care less. I don't know. To me, if I'm going to give a rating, because I think we should give ratings at this point, if I was going to give this film a score out of 10...
Yep, that's why we're here.
I was going to be forgiving with it. Initially, I was like, you know what? I could do this. And then I was going to be harsh, and I was like, maybe it's this. But I don't know. For me, at the end of the day, I didn't have a good time. I cringed more than anything I've ever dealt with. This isn't horrible. You can have fun. If this is your kind of movie and you want to just kill a couple, like an hour and a half, I think it went for. If you want to kill that amount of time, then by all means, go right ahead. But I really didn't dig it. So I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10.
Oof.
I was considering a 2.
How's that? Oh, you can go see it and have fun with it. 3 out of 10.
Well, if you're like, someone...
That's basically unwatchable.
No, it's not. Okay, a 1 out of 10 is unwatchable. A 2 is, like, really bad. But
I think we gotta work out our scale, because I think we have very different opinions on what a 3 out of 10 is. Oh my god. Okay, that's fine. Yep. Alright. Well, I guess it was more for me then, because it's definitely had more my style of humour than yours, I think. I don't mind a few cheesy jokes here and there. Like I said, I didn't like all of them. I didn't find any of them particularly cringy. Maybe. I guess it was a bit of an eye roll, especially when he was flossy, and I was like, really? That's kind of dated.
And the farts.
Well, yeah, I said that earlier.
Yeah.
I don't like fart jokes. I'm not interested in that. I had a fun time. Not as much fun as everyone else in the cinema was having.
Yeah, people in my cinema were having way too much fun. I was like, guys, calm down, please.
There's a lady gasping in the background. She goes,
we had a kid behind us. I think he must have been 12, 13, something like that. He was like wailing anytime something remotely funny. Not even funny. Like anytime a character opened their mouth, it was just like, ah! And I was just like, please stop.
Yeah, I think there's a part where Sonic almost dies or whatever. She's like, like, come on, have you never watched a movie before?
I know, people can be so dramatic. Anyway, your score.
Yeah. Okay, I was originally, I always talk about my little thought process. I was originally seeing a 7 out of 10. That's how I felt when I walked out the movie. I'm like, you know what? I had a really good time. This is fine. But, you're talking to you, obviously, I can see a bit more flaws and always a potential what the film's going to be, which I don't always look at personally, but once you draw my attention to it, that's it. I can't stop thinking about it. But yeah, I'm kind of torn if it's average or above average, because I feel like I gave Rise of Skywalker a 6 out of 10, and that's how I'm kind of sitting with this. I'm like, Like, wait, is it the same? Did I enjoy this as much as I enjoyed Star Wars?
To be honest, I actually I thought about Rise of Skywalker as well when I was giving it my score, because I think I gave it a 4 on our podcast, and I just thought to myself, did I like it as much as Rise of Skywalker? No, I don't think I did.
For that reason, I'm going to give it a 5, just because we don't do half scores. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to say 5 because I enjoyed, just for the sole reason that I definitely enjoyed Star Wars more than this movie, and I'd rather watch Star Wars again. And I don't really want to watch this movie again. Yes, I had fun, but once was enough. I'm not interested in seeing this again. So for that reason, I think it's average. It's 5 out of 10.
Alrighty. Well, now that that's over and done with, we can stop talking about Sonic. Alright, everybody. It's been great having you listening on this week's episode. Thanks to Nathan for joining me. I guess we'll see you next time when we talk about another film, whatever it may be. Alright, everybody.
Only time will tell. Bye.
Anyway, alright, everybody. We'll catch us later.